On today's show, we've seen the comments and we're watching him dominate the playoffs. But let's be clear, Sam Bennett does not make sense for the Ottawa Senators as an unrestricted free agent this summer.
And we continue with our 2025 NHL Draft profiles with players ranked 48 and 47.
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today is Friday, May 23rd, and Pillsy, let me be even clearer. I would love Sam Bennett to join the Ottawa Senators, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I don't see it happening either, Ross. I think any team that has aspirations of making the playoffs would look at Sam Bennett and be like, that's a guy that would make a massive impact on our team, especially he puts up points in the playoffs and plays that style of game that clearly is successful in the postseason, as the Florida Panthers have had lots of postseason success recently. But let's be honest. I think, honestly, I'd be surprised if he even considers leaving Florida. I think they're just going to be like, look, you're a key part of this team. We've got a good thing going here. You're a playoff performer. We're going to be in the playoffs for years to come. Let's just get this done. Tax-free Sunshine State. Unless he's like, you know what? This is my first time to test free agency. Let me see what the offers are out there. Get into a bidding war, and then maybe he drives the price up a little bit with Florida. But I don't even see it getting to that point. If Florida doesn't just give him the money he basically wants, and being tax-free, they can get a sizable discount on things, I'd be shocked.
He last signed for $4.425 million as a restricted free agent after a midseason trade from the Calgary Flames down to South Florida, and it's been a perfect fit. Everyone knew that he was a good player. This guy went 6th overall in his draft year, and it just ended up being the right place at the right time. When he had gotten to Florida, he was in the worst year of his career, only 4 goals in 38 games with Calgary, and the year before had 8 goals, 12 points in 52 games during the season that ended early because of COVID. But he joined Florida in his first full season there, had 28 goals, 49 points, and then continued that with 40 points, 41 points, and this year had a career high 51. However, it's the playoffs where Sam Bennett has made his reputation. He's already got 9 goals, including 2 last night in the conference finals. He's up to 13 in 14 games points-wise. Last year, he had 14 points in 19 games on the way to a Stanley Cup, had 15 points the year before that. Only 5 players have more even-strength playoff points than Sam Bennett in the last 3 postseasons. They're named Barkov, Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, Draisaitl, and McDavid. That's it. And that brings me to why I believe Sam Bennett will stay with the Florida Panthers. The best comparable I could think of is his teammate Carter Verhaeghe, who has had better numbers throughout the regular season and equally steps up his game in the playoffs. And I just saw him sign right before this season got underway for $7 million per season on an 8-year contract extension. Another similar story of a guy that got traded to Florida early in his career, even earlier in Verhaeghe's case after his rookie season with Tampa. And the numbers in the regular season weren't amazing the first 2 years, but the last 3 he's really stepped up. It just makes perfect sense to stay there. If he wants to chase the bag, I can't even imagine what a desperate team would throw at him in terms of cap hit. But Sam Bennett has won there. He's a part of the core there. They have the money to sign him. Just doesn't make any sense for me that he would want to leave.
And Florida has to keep him, right? Like we talked about recently, Ross, this is a team that has no issue trading away their first-round picks. So they don't have any top prospects in the pipeline. The prospects that they do have are already playing and thriving there. We mentioned the Finnish players, Luosterainen and Lundell. So not only do they not have any blue-chip guys coming up the pipeline, but they don't have the draft capital to go acquire a guy to replace him. And we looked at the free agents this year, unless they go out and get a Brock Nelson, a Besser, a Ehlers, like those guys don't really bring the same thing that Sam Bennett brings as far as the way they play. So they're not going to want to do that.
The only free agent that plays the way Sam Bennett plays is also with the Florida Panthers right now, and he's 10 years older. It's Brad Marchand.
Yeah, exactly. And they might re-sign him too. I wouldn't be surprised if he's comfortable there and wants to ride out the sunset in, ironically, Sunrise, Florida. But I just think if Sam Bennett, let's pretend Sam Bennett does hit the open market, Ross. I still think Florida's probably going to outbid any team or their offer is going to be more attractive than any team. Let me put it that way.
I think that's it, because if you look at how the Panthers, and we're at the point now where we're tipping the scales of being the Locked On Panthers podcast, lots of Sens content on the channel here if you want to dive into the off season. We've had 3 weeks to do that, but it does center around what Ottawa would be able to offer Sam Bennett. But to get to that, you have to understand what Florida has to offer, and their contract hierarchy right now up front is Barkov at $10 million, Tkachuk at 9.5, Reinhart at 8.6. Now, those are all contracts that were signed fairly recently outside of Barkov. So Reinhart, to me, is the best example because he just signed last year. 8.65. There is no way Sam Bennett's walking into that locker room making more money than Sam Reinhart.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to end up somewhere between Verhaeghe's new deal at 7 and Reinhardt's new deal. You think that's fair with Florida? I think that's where he slots in.
I think he slots in identically to Verhaeghe. Like, I would not be surprised if that contract is identical to what Verhaeghe signed. I know that the cap hadn't been announced that it was going up when Verhaeghe signed in October of this past year, but his contract kicks in next year, and it's a similar raise, right? Verhaeghe's making 4.1 right now, Bennett 4.4. Why not just carbon copy it? Those guys are both on the second line right now. They're both 50 point players, I would say. Verhaeghe has proven that he can get 70 twice in the regular season. I just think that would be a fair contract and one that would keep both sides happy. The Florida Panthers have $19 million in cap space right now. They obviously have Marchand as an unrestricted free agent. Other than that, Mackie Samoskevich, RFA, but even though he's a first-round pick, he's been playing in a depth role, healthy scratch type situation. And then it's Aaron Ekblad, which brings me to the last part of the Florida thing before we move on to how Ottawa would attract Sam Bennett. But Florida's number one priority, Aaron Ekblad or Sam Bennett?
I think it's Bennett. If they hadn't gone and acquired Jones, different story. But they've got Jones now for the way he's playing, a reasonable price at $7 million, with Chicago still retaining salary for, I don't know, I think like another 6 years or something crazy like that.
Yeah, he's signed until 2030. So he's got 4 more years on this contract afterwards. And I agree with you. Now, the one thing I'll say is Aaron Ekblad and Seth Jones are the only right shot defensemen on this entire D-corps. So they're going to be in the market if they do let Ekblad go to replace him with a more, I would say, a lower cost player. But then you'd be looking at a top pair of Forsling Jones, and then Mikkola would probably be on that second pair, and it's starting to get a little bit thin after that. So they would be in the market, but do they have to pay Aaron Ekblad? And let's say they do pay Aaron Ekblad $8 million. They would still have another, not a math guy, $11 million to spend on the rest of those names I mentioned and filling in the contracts below that at minimum value.
Yeah, I got Bennett making 7.5 with Florida. And then I think a team on the open market will go as high as 8.5. The thing is, other teams might go higher. Like TSN has had some reports. I think it was Pierre LeBrun, right? Talking about how it's
Martin Biron said he thinks that he could be a $10 million player, Sam Bennett.
Yeah. Like there's
again,
some talks out there that he could get there.
Career high 51 points for
but
Sam
not
Bennett.
Every player's value is based solely on points.
But let's put it in perspective. Claude Giroux had 50 points this year, and Sens fans, I get the age factor, but like production-wise, people are saying, Giroux's production is down so much. He had 1 less point than Sam Bennett this year.
I repeat, not everyone's value is tied only to points. Sam Bennett does things that Claude Giroux does not. And I think teams would be willing to go higher, Ross. But the thing is, the teams that value Sam Bennett so much that they'd be willing to overpay in free agency, and even 8.5 probably might be an overpayment. But teams that
overpay.
Depends. Cap's going up and depends what you value. But the teams that would go even higher than that, they don't have the cap space to do it. Like the teams that would value him that much because they're like, just for example, think about the Carolina Hurricanes. They're probably like, oh my God, we always have good regular seasons. We're able to get through the first 2 rounds, and then we get to the conference finals and we get swept every time. Looks like that might happen again against Florida with Sam Bennett. They're like, we got guys that get points. We need guys that play a harder, tougher, rattier game so that in the playoffs, when it's deep, we've got those guys on our team and we're not going up against them. They might be like, hey, we've got the extra money since we didn't sign Rantanen. Maybe we try to overpay him, but the rebuilding teams are not going to pay this guy that much money because his value doesn't reflect what they need. So that's where it becomes interesting. But Ross, to tie a bow on this, sorry, Sens fans, the Ottawa Senators, in my mind, don't even have a snowball's chance in hell at acquiring Sam Bennett. I don't know how they make the money work. I don't know how they prove to him that it's the best spot for him. It's not going to work. And I mean, didn't Brady Tkachuk fight Sam Bennett at the Four Nations?
Hey, he also fought Dennis Gilbert. They were fast friends.
Were they?
Barely knew you.
Yeah.
Our friends over at AFP Analytics, they do NHL contract projections all across the board. They have Sam Bennett cashing in at a 6-year contract at $6.6 million. That would be a $2.2 million raise for him. And I will tell you right now, that number is far too low from what the hockey men will be paying the 29-year-old. So if you're Steve Staios, of course, you're going to make a phone call if it gets to July 1st and Sam Bennett is available. But what would the offer be? We'll get to that. And then our NHL draft profiles, 2 extremely interesting prospects right now that could even be first-round picks, but they're in the late 40s in our draft rankings. We'll tell you why on Haoxi Wang and Vaclav Nestrasil. Oh, yeah, we're basically the Sens scouting department right now. Yesterday, we covered 2 players. One was 6'6", the other was 6'2". Both of these players are also giants. That's later on. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, but that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances.
I just downloaded this app last month, and it has already paid dividends. You can see which merchants you're buying from, which groups, what categories, and say, hey, where can I cut and put a little extra in my back pocket?
Yeah, it makes it easy to track all your accounts, like Ross is saying, your investments and your spending in one place so that you stop just managing your money and start building that wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and plan your long-term goals. And managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all that stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.
All right, Pillsy. So Sam Bennett is a pipe dream for the Ottawa Senators, but if Steve Staios was able to pull some strings, what would the highest offer you would give Sam Bennett to join the Ottawa Senators?
I mean, this is clearly hypothetical, and there's so many variables that would have to shake out to even get to a point where you could come up with what budget you have to spend. But personally, Ross, I think I'm not going above $7 million, which doesn't get it done.
It doesn't get it done at all. I would go as high as 7.14.
Okay.
That contract would be a little bit more similar to what Nazem Kadri signed with the Calgary Flames. Kadri was 2 years older and had one Stanley Cup under his belt, I guess, as of the time of this recording. So does Sam Bennett. That could be extended to 2. But in terms of style, pretty comparable, I would say. So
but also, Ross,
more.
like, he plays center. What are you gonna do? I know
You
he can.
you probably move Cousins over to wing.
Yeah.
I know, or you trade one of I know nobody wants to hear it, myself included, but you'd probably look at moving Cousins or Pinto and try to get a defenseman with that asset.
Yeah, and that's just
it would have to be Cousins money wise, because Cousins is making literally what I'm willing to offer Sam Bennett.
Yeah, or you put Bennett on the wing. I'm pretty sure he played some time in the wing in Calgary and even a little bit in Florida, but typically he is a centerman, and the Ottawa Senators are set for centerman, except they do need a fourth line center.
Yeah, lots of people having their opinions on Twitter at Sens Central. We asked what the highest you'd be willing to go on a contract for Sam Bennett with the Ottawa Senators. We want to hear in the comments on Twitter, or on YouTube rather, as well. So you can let us know there. You can see all of the responses, and they are going from not over $7. Well, he put $7, Carl. I think he's gonna make more than $7. Should be an M after that. We got you. But others are saying, hey, give him the moon. Brent says you could say go all the way up to $9 million per season, 9.5 people.
Where's that money coming from?
The piggy bank. But not to say anything against Sam Bennett, because as we saw last night with his 2-goal performance, this guy is a bona fide playoff performer. By the way, he's minus 15 this season, the regular season.
When you win a cup, you're not concerned about your plus minus in the regular season.
And it is pretty interesting, though. Minus 15 with 59% of his starts in the offensive zone.
And weren't you saying he has elite 5-on-5 playoff numbers?
Yeah, playoff numbers. I mentioned he's 6th in the last 3 playoffs in 5-on-5 points, and 3rd in even strength, or tied for 1st in the last 3 playoffs in even strength goals with Carter Verhaeghe. Again, that name keeps getting mentioned right next to Sam Bennett in terms of numbers, and Leon Draisaitl. They all have 16 goals. Nobody has more at even strength in the last 3 playoffs.
Now, Sam Bennett typically plays with Matthew Tkachuk, right?
And Carter Verhaeghe. That's the second line right now.
Yeah, so Matthew Tkachuk being injured for a good chunk of the regular season probably didn't help his 5-on-5 numbers.
There you go. All right, Pillsy, let's get to this draft profile breakdown. We've got 2 of them, and really, really interesting, I think, to get into a left shot defenseman. Stop me if you heard that before, 6'6", but his story is incredible. And then just an absolute offensive weapon who's really raised their game. But before we get to that, let's touch on the 2 playoff series. Like, do you believe that it's going to be a sweep for the Florida Panthers? Looks that way. And I don't think Rod Brind'Amour has a leg to stand on if he's saying they didn't get swept after a 5-0 loss last night.
I was going to say, the real question is, does Rod Brind'Amour believe they're going to get swept, whether it's factual or not? No, I mean, Carolina's got to get 1, but they don't have a chance in this series. I mean, Ross, this is a team that had elite numbers in shots and shot attempts. And at the end of the second period, I believe, end of the second period, the hometown crowd was chanting "shoot the puck." Like, they were just so pissed. I think they only had 7 shots at that point. They were getting outshot 5-3 in the first period and down 3-0. Like, it was not good. And the Florida Panthers, like, I think them seeing the Leafs and Hurricanes as playoff opponents, they love that. They love beating up on their big brother Tampa. Yep. So they like that too. Sorry if there's any Hurricanes fans listening, but you're cooked.
Imagine telling somebody after watching last night's performance that the Panthers finished 1 point ahead of Ottawa in the regular season.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy that it got that close. 1
point. Now, get this. There's a 2-pronged stat here. First, I'll go with the result and then why it happened. The Panthers have had their opponents' fans boo their team off of the ice in 3 straight games.
That's a sick stat.
Do you know what the goal differential is in those 3 games? The last 3 road games that the Panthers have played.
It's 17-2.
It's 6-1, 6-1, 5-0. So that's 17-2.
Look at me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or sorry, last 4 because I missed the 5-2 game. So this is ridiculous. It's 22-4 is the total score in their last 4 road games.
Yeah, Ross, you got to get the analytic going. Booze per 60.
Oh my goodness. I thought Scotiabank Library led the league in booze per 60, but it's basically wherever the Florida Panthers are playing.
We're talking about booze for or booze against?
Booze for. Leafs still winning that. Booze against the Panthers.
No, Yeah. Yes.
Incredible. We need to get ourselves a run of years like the Florida Panthers right now. Losing the Stanley Cup final, win the Stanley Cup final, and now they're up 2-0 in the Eastern Conference final. Game 2 of the West final goes tonight in Dallas. The Edmonton Oilers would love to replicate their first 40 minutes, and then the Dallas Stars would like to take that last period where they outscored the Oilers 5-0 in the third period, including 3 goals on the power play, and we'll see. That's going to be a fascinating game tonight. Lots of storylines in our draft profiles. That's next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day. All right, Pillsy, it is our 2025 NHL draft coverage. If you're just joining along on the show, we've been doing this for now 6 NHL drafts where we do our prospect profiles based on the rankings of 7 different scouting entities. We take their rankings, we average them out, and then we break down their profile, why they could be a good or maybe a bad fit with the Ottawa Senators, and we will get right to it. Also, every weekend we post the individual draft profiles on YouTube, so if you missed any and you just want to get right to them, you can find those living on YouTube. And even for the past years, we've been posting them on YouTube individually the last 2 years. So if a player, a prospect that's now closer to the NHL, they catch your attention, you're wondering what they were like as prospects, you can always find those available on YouTube. A like and a subscription go a long way to helping the show grow as well. We began our countdown yesterday with Daniil Prokhorov and Charlie Trethewey, and we will get right to it. Coming in at number 48 on our Locked On Senators NHL Draft Rankings, it's Haoxi Wang. He goes by Simon, and he plays defense for the Ottawa Generals. A real fascinating human interest story as well with how this player got to where he is.
Yeah, Ross, I'll let you dive into that after we go through some of the numbers here for Simon Wang. 6'6", 212 pounds, left shot defenseman, born July 27th, 2007. And he started last season out in the OJHL with the King Rebellion, where he lit up that league, 38 games, 4 goals, 18 assists for 22 points. Lots of scouts got eyes on him, and it was clear that he needed to be bumped up a level. So it goes from the OJHL, drops the J, and just goes to the OHL with the Ottawa Generals, where in 32 games, definitely the points slowed. 0 goals, 2 assists. And he got a lot of playoff experience with the Generals that went all the way in the OHL till they met up with the London Knights. Obviously, 21 playoff games, 3 assists for him. And he's committed to Boston University next year. Maybe, Ross, he'll be on a deep pair with the guy we covered yesterday, Charlie Trethewey.
Exactly, and that would be a lefty-righty pair. But Simon Wang also could be back in the OHL. Now with the new rules, he can change that commitment, whether he's pushing it back a year or just deciding that the Ontario Hockey League is the best for his development. Bob McKenzie had a great piece on him. We'll get to the crux of that in just a moment. But Bob McKenzie has him as a first-round talent as of his midseason rankings, 31st overall. Elite Prospects had him at 35 on their April rankings. Scott Wheeler has him coming in at 43. Craig Button, not convinced, at 74 as of now. And McKean's Hockey has him at 76. Corey Pronman did not rank Simon Wang in his top 80. Now, where Simon Wang becomes extremely intriguing as a prospect, Bob McKenzie actually called him the most intriguing prospect in this year's draft, was born in Beijing and raised there until he was a teenager, about 14 to 15 years old during 2020, to pursue his dream of playing in the NHL. His dad works in the Chinese government, while his mom is heavily involved in sports and actually owned and operated 5 different hockey arenas in China. So that's where Simon first learned to skate and train. So he played in tournaments, but not a surprise, in Beijing, it's not like you can just join your local elite hockey program. And he didn't really play organized hockey until he got to Major Bantam. That's 14 years old. So he lived at a residence in St. Andrews College. His mom has now joined him in Canada, but that's a big jump of faith to come over and just start playing Bantam hockey, not knowing how you stack up against Canadian youth hockey players. And to make sure this guy could play in the OJHL, his mom bought the Brantford 99ers, bought the team. He now steps into that league, though, and shows, hey, this was not nepotism. This guy could play. In his first year with Brantford, got his feet wet, and then the next year popped off. 22 points in 38 games, solid defensively, an extremely physical player. And he'll have to find the right line there, because I think he did in the OHL, only 19 penalty minutes. But in his year in the OJHL, his full year, had 73 penalty minutes. And that was the start of this past year. When he got called up, he didn't look back. Played 32 games with Oshawa. But it seems to me like scouts are still trying to get a handle on him. If you talk to anyone around the Ontario scouting system, they say that anywhere between 20 and 32 NHL teams are represented at every one of this kid's games, because the physical tools are undeniable at 6'6", 212 pounds already, and only turning 18 in July. So he's got so much runway, so much experience to catch up on in playing organized hockey, that he might be a guy that becomes the first, like, oh man, I can't believe they took a swing on him that early in the draft.
And he's going to be a guy, Ross. I don't think you see him make the jump to the NHL quickly, but when he gets there eventually, like, I think this is going to be a guy when he's like 25, that he's going to be ready and in great shape to join the league, but he's not going to jump up there because, like you mentioned, he didn't play in serious competitive hockey till Bantam. But when your mom owns 5 rinks, doesn't matter whether they're in China or Alberta, you're getting lots of ice time. And it's really helped him out, because for a guy that's 6'6", 212 pounds, he is an elite skater. And that's not even one of those for his size metrics. Like, he's just a good skater in general. And I'm assuming, Ross, back in Beijing, he's just getting on the ice, doing skating drills, skating around cones, stops, starts, suicides, pivots, all those things, working on his edge work. And when you're not playing and you're just focusing on skating, you're going to be able to really hone those skills. And that's what he's done. But there's a flip side to that. His hockey IQ and his reads have a long way to go, because he hasn't had that experience. He hasn't had, the right hockey minds, coaches, trainers, skills coaches helping him with the actual game of hockey until he was later on in his life. So he's got a bit of catch up to do based on the players that are playing in the OHL that have probably been on skates and organized hockey and doing summer camps and playing AAA their entire lives. So that's why I think, Ross, the raw size and abilities are there. But for him to learn the game at the pace he's going to have to be a professional, I think that's going to take a bit of time, which is no fault of his own.
No, not at all. And we always see NHL teams bet on size and mobility. If you can skate at that size, at that age, you're going to get scouts' attention. And Scott Wheeler calls him extraordinarily mobile for a player his size, with impressive skating technique through his inside and outside edges laterally, and flowing mechanics going north and back on pucks. He also mentioned that it was a very deep blue line for the Oshawa Generals this year. And in the playoffs, he only played about 9 to 12 minutes. So that, to me, could have been a good thing to watch how Ben Danford, who we covered last year, first round pick of the Leafs, and others on that blue line were able to handle those minutes, and he got a front row seat to it. Like, what better development for a 17-year-old kid who's just in his third year of playing organized hockey is that? So I think he could be a breakout candidate in the OHL this upcoming season. And if he pops off and scores 30 or 40 points at that size next year, I know that's an extremely high jump from what he had this year, which he was on pace in a full season for like 5 points. I just think I'm not going to say boom or bust, because I do think that if he can skate and play at that size, he could at the very least be like a poor man's Tyler Myers, let's say, at the NHL level. But if he can put it all together, the sky's the limit for this guy. And that's why, if he's still there, and there's no way he is, but if he's there at the end of the third round, you scoop that up immediately with the Florida Panthers pick.
Yeah, I don't see him being there. I also, Ross, I don't see this as a guy that you look at projected points as a progression in development. Like you mentioned, you're hoping he gets like 30 or some points in the OHL next year.
Well, one thing I noticed about him that could lead to that, and what made me think of it, a lot of the shifts that we watch for him, he does a great job of keeping pucks in at the offensive blue line. When like it's either a chip, he knocks it down, or he's able to just kind of poke the puck away of a guy trying to break out of the zone.
Yeah, and he plays a smart, simple game. Like a lot of plays, it's just him. He gets the puck, chips off the board, quick pass. He doesn't try to do anything too crazy or risky. He plays a physical game, and we talked about how he had 2 assists this year. One of them I saw was on a point shot that got tipped by, I think it was Kobe Barlow, the Jets prospect. So, like, he's not a guy that's putting himself in offensive positions, but as he gets better playing with the puck, you could see him get a little bit more action with the secondary assists, and maybe some of those shots make it through and end up in the net. But this is a guy, Ross, I see as being an elite, good skating, shut down third pair defenseman in the NHL one day.
So how many stars for Ottawa Senators fans?
I gave him 3.5. And that's, I think, overall, I would give him 4 stars, Ross, because I see the vision, I see the potential. But like you mentioned, like, you're not going to pick this guy with 21st overall. Even if you trade back, you're probably not picking him late first round or early second round. And the Ottawa Senators do not need another big left shot defenseman. But I think the team that does get him, I could see, Ross, a team that I think would key in on this guy, like Nashville Predators.
Yeah.
That's a team that knows defensive prospects. They're able to get these defensemen. They pick them, they develop them, and then they either keep them or trade them for other players and position needs that they need later on. So I don't think it's going to work out for the Ottawa Senators, but fascinating story. I'm going to be watching to see where he ends up and how he develops.
Imagine a summer of him training with Mark Borowiecki.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a lot of fun. A pair of him and Yak would be great. And Ross, there is a Sens prospect connection. He played 4 games with Luke Ellenis with the North York Rangers back in the day. So there at least would be a slight similarity, or not similarity, but someone that he would at least know.
Last year, Kevin He, 4th round pick of the Winnipeg Jets, was the first Chinese-born player to sign an NHL contract. Kevin He moved to Montreal with his family at 5 years old. So he still grew up in the Canadian youth hockey program. This would be the first Chinese-raised player, came to Canada as a 14-year-old to sign an NHL contract if and when that happens. That is Simon Wang, who comes in at number 48 with an average ranking of 51.8. Let us know in the comments how you feel about Simon Wang. Coming in at number 47, we are going to the USHL, one of the high risers throughout this season. It's Czech-born player Vaclav Nestrasil.
Yep, Ross, he plays for the Lumberjacks, and if he wasn't playing hockey, this guy could probably be a legit lumberjack with the size that he has. 6'5", 190 pounds, right shot, right winger, from Czechia, April 2007 birthday. And in 61 games with the Lumberjacks, he had 19 goals, 23 assists for 42 points. And then in 14 playoff games, he popped off in the playoffs too with 7 goals, 6 assists for 13 points. But Ross, I want to talk about what you touched on there. Scott Wheeler mentioned in his write-up of Nestrasil that he was a guy that started off slow, but then figured things out big time. In his first 21 games, he only had 8 points, not probably the start he expected. But then in his last 40 games, he finishes with 34 points, nearly a point per game pace. So that's someone that really figured it out and got comfortable as the season went on.
So much so that his commitment to the University of Massachusetts has been pushed up. Initially, he was going to join them after next season in the USHL, but the decision was made that he is going to UMass next season. And that's a very good program there as well. He's rangy. He's got room for physical growth, but our good friend over at Locked On NHL Prospects, who we're going to add to our rankings going forward, Sebastian High, in his write-up about him, calls him a violent player with elite defensive engagement and relentless pressure. So not only is he a guy that can put up points, as you mentioned, getting a lot more production as the season went on, but he also will not hurt you in the defensive side of the game. He took huge strides this season, and he's also been among the USHL's most aggressive checkers and most daring on-puck creators throughout the season. That's again from Sebastian High. So I think that he gives me a lot of late first round vibes when it's all said and done. Bob McKenzie has him 60th, but again, those are mid-season rankings. He feels like a guy that's just going to continue to shoot up rankings. Craig Button, rather, with TSN in his most recent rankings, he's not sold yet. Late second round pick for him, or early third, 65th overall. Scott Wheeler has him at 55. McKean's at 50, and Elite Prospects at 26. So maybe I'm ahead of myself, but couldn't you see him like early second round pick to the San Jose Sharks, already a deep prospect pool? That to me would be such a nice complementary piece in their system.
Yeah, I like Nestrasil a lot, Ross, but I think first round is probably a little rich, but we'll see what happens. From the highlights I watched of him, this is a classic power forward. Ross, I didn't see a single goal that he scored, and I think I saw most of his 19 goals in this highlight pack. None of them were farther than 3 feet from the crease. All his goals right in there, right at the net. He's able to stand his ground when defensemen are trying to box him out. I mean, at 6'5", 190, you're going to be able to do that in the USHL. And then almost all of his goals are on rebounds. So he's able to pivot his body so that when the shot comes in, he's seeing the shot, and then he can pivot, use that size to turn around, get that rebound before anyone else, battle out defenseman sticks, and beat the goalie cleanly. He just has such a skill for that I was impressed by. And he's even able to slip to soft ice where defensemen are so focused on puck watching that he'll just slowly get a little bit away from the crease, and then that rebound pops to him and he buries it. And this guy hunts down pucks. There's one highlight of the other team had their net pulled and they're trying to break the puck up the ice, and he's just all over. He's a one-man forecheck all over these guys, turns the puck over in the neutral zone and pots it into the empty net easily. Like, this guy is put on the ice to score goals in front of the slot, and he's going to make it difficult for other teams trying to get the puck past him, because more likely than not, he wants that puck more than you, and more likely than not, he's stronger and bigger, and he's going to be able to take it from you.
Yeah, and he had a great playoffs as well, winning the Clark Cup. Muskegon gets the trophy. They won 4-3 in the final game there in overtime, I may mention. That's as well. And Nestrasil had 13 points in 14 playoff games. So the stock continues to rise for Vaclav Nestrasil, and we'll see where he ends up. How many Sens stars for Nestrasil?
I gave him 4 stars, Ross. I really like this player a lot. Picking him with 21 would be too soon, but I can see if they trade back. Like I said, I think it's too rich to take him in the first round. But if the Sens trade back to a late first rounder, this is the type of guy that fits their profile. I said a right winger is one of the top priorities for me position-wise. He's got size. He's a goal scorer. It seems like he puts the work in. So I give this guy 4 stars if the Sens find an appropriate spot to take him.
Nestrasil comes in at number 47 on our Locked On Senators draft rankings with an average of 51.2 for now. Again, these rankings, some of them will be updated, and we imagine that he will be one of those late risers towards the draft. All right, Pills, any final thoughts on today's show?
Final thoughts for me is I normally don't pay a lot of attention to the Worlds, Ross. I just kind of check in, watch the highlights, see how things are going. But my God, what a shocking turn of events. Denmark, with one NHL player, Nikolai Ehlers, added after the Jets were eliminated, defeat Canada in the quarterfinals, scoring a goal in the dying minutes, I think even in the last minute of the third period, and an absolute upset. And Ross, this wasn't a classic Team Canada Worlds team. This was almost an all-star team for Team Canada. Crosby, McKinnon, like these guys were stacked. I could go on even more with star players that they had, and to lose to Denmark like that was gotta be like, if you're Crosby and McKinnon, you're sitting there being like, how the heck did we let this happen?
How did that happen? Credit to Denmark, though. They're hosting the Worlds. It's them in Sweden right now, so their fans, man, that's a full day off in the country. And unfortunately, Matt Sogard, I'm not sure if it's the injury or what, but not on the team for Denmark, which is unfortunate because that would have been quite the experience. And what a breath of fresh air for Denmark to be able to do that right before the Olympics. And they just qualified as one of the final teams to get into the Olympics. So they're going to carry a bunch of momentum off of that. Shane Pinto had a point, which means Team USA won their quarterfinal game. The semifinals are set at the World Championships. It will be Sweden versus USA, and it will be Switzerland versus Denmark. Switzerland with a 6-0 win over Austria in their quarterfinal game. US beat Finland 5-2, and a nice photo was captured. Stargazing, our good friend on Twitter, posted a photo of Nicholas Matinpalo and Shane Pinto in the handshake line. Final thoughts from me: brutal loss for the Ottawa Charge last night. They score with 2.5 minutes left to go up 1-0. Goalie-friendly show. We like a nice 0-0 game late in the third period. Then they give up a power play late. The most hated player, from what I'm told, on the Minnesota Frost ties the game with 15 seconds left. And then the Frost win in overtime. So now the series shifts to Minnesota for the next 2 games of this best-of-5 series with a 1-1 score. So
overtime, too.
Unless there's a split in the next 2 games, that's it for home games for the Ottawa Charge. But if they get the split, it'll be a decisive Game 5 at TD Place Arena. So that would be quite the intrigue going in to that. And the series again shifts to Minnesota. Game 3 will take place on Saturday at 5:00 Eastern. Game 4 will be at 5:00 Eastern on Monday, May 26th. Last final thought from me is Mathieu Darche has been hired as the New York Islanders general manager. He's been the assistant GM in Tampa. A lot of people say he's been knocking on the door of a GM job for a long time. So they're going from old to fresh blood as a first-time GM after having Lou Lamoriello there forever. And what better way to step into a new situation than having the first overall pick? So Mathieu Darche has moved on from the Tampa Bay Lightning. He is now the GM of the Islanders. All right. Go ahead, Pels.
That's a good hire, Ross, because remember when we were looking at potential GMs for the Sens, he was at the top. I believe he was our top choice, was he not?
Believe so.
Yeah.
Apparently he's heavily considered for the Penguins GM job that Dubas got. That's from Pierre LeBrun just a minute ago. Was also interviewed with Montreal, Vancouver, Chicago, and after multiple interviews with the Islanders, he gets his GM opportunity. Thank you so much for watching, listening, liking, and engaging with the show. If you enjoyed it, click the thumbs up on YouTube. Give us a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. It's been a awesome preview of the offseason. It still feels like we got a couple minor contract extensions. The big work still to come For Steve Staios, we'll be with you every step of the way, Monday through Friday here on Locked On Senators and when news breaks. So make sure you're subscribed when new videos go live. We'll be posting our draft profiles that we've done so far over the weekend. And then we'll be back on Monday with a brand new week. It will be the week before, the month before the NHL draft. You like that?
Yeah, that's good. Let's go.
So stay tuned for all that and more. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.